up, I've moved to a lot of different places, but I've spent most of my life in Mumbai, India. In India, most people expect high academic achieving students to pursue a career in either medicine or engineering. However, even as a child, I knew that I did not want to choose a career in either of these fields, mostly because I thought it was too cliched and too mainstream. I wanted to do something that was special and unique, something that I would be remembered for, something that would help me make a difference in the world. The only problem was I didn't know what that something was. So coming into ISM, I didn't really have a clear idea of what I wanted to do. I didn't really know what I was passionate about that could also be a career field. But in the end, after some thinking, I decided upon neuroscience. There are three main reasons why I chose neuroscience. The first major event in my life was when I was in 3rd or 4th grade. I remember watching a TV show on National Geographic. It was an entire series about the brain. And the first episode was about intelligence and child prodigies. The show featured the story of Sarah Polgar. She was one of the first female chess grandmasters. She was trained by her father to be a chess champion. Her father believed that all children could be trained to be geniuses and to be child prodigies if they were just trained the right way and they were determined to do it. He didn't believe that talent was passed through genetics. So he trained all 3 of his daughters to be chess champions. And I can still remember the feeling of awe I felt when I watched that for the first time. I was even more excited because of the fact that I too was learning chess at the time. So I was really excited, like, I can make myself a genius. This is so cool. I don't have to be born a genius. But of course, that didn't really work out because I lacked the hard work part. But besides that interest, the TV show was my first introduction to the brain and to its capacity for change and for knowledge. And I was just fascinated by how the brain is just so changeable and how everyone can be a genius. And that interest has stayed with me for all these years. The second part was like, fast forward to the summer of 8th grade, I stumbled upon a book titled The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Deutsch. This book focused primarily upon neuroplasticity, which is the field which explores the idea that the brain is elastic and that the brain can constantly change and evolve, even in adulthood. This book talked about many experiments that proved that the brain is indeed elastic and is capable of self-repair and recovery, even after serious damage done to the brain in adulthood. It talked about many real-life cases of patients who overcome a range of mental illnesses, including stroke, Parkinson's, paralysis, even structural deficiencies in their brain were overcome by the rest of their brain. So that book was really taught me like how powerful the brain is. The TV show touched upon it, but this book focused more upon the healing powers of the brain, and that was just really mind-boggling. The last factor was my AP psychology class, which I took last year. It was the first time that I had any formal, in-depth instruction in a field related to neuroscience. So I was really excited to learn about the history and the scientists and the past and the experiments that they did. And I knew that if I got a chance, I would love to be a part of that. It was also like when I realized what neuroscience is really about. Neuroscience is about like uncovering the mysteries of the brain. The brain is still one of the biggest mysteries to mankind. And neuroscience seeks to solve those problems and solve those answers and answer all those pressing questions. And that's something that I really am excited to be a part of. Because neuroscience is a field that's always growing and always changing, and you're always learning. You never stop learning. So coming into ISM, I was definitely excited to research the other topics of neuroscience. The only thing I'd heard about was neuroplasticity. So I was excited to learn about the other things as well. But like for the first research assessment, I focused on what I knew, neuroplasticity, and I went back to my roots and found an article similar to the book I'd read. And the article talked about a woman who lived her entire life without her cerebellum. Cerebellum is an important part of the brain. It's a major part of the brain in terms of size and function, and it controls the speech and movement. Since the woman didn't have one from birth, she should have been severely impaired, but she wasn't, and no one even realized that she was missing her brain until she was 24 years old. So basically, the rest of her brain had rewired itself to take up the missing function. And the brain had done this without any treatments or medication. It had done it on its own from birth. And that really reminded me of the book I'd read about, and it reiterated my interest in why I like the brain so much. It was an important research assessment for me. For the second one, I wanted to explore the field a little bit more and go into something new that I'd never heard about. So one of the first things that came up was this thing called neural law. I'd never even heard about it before. But neural law is the field that explores the idea that criminal actions can sometimes be explained by the fact that the criminals have abnormal brain activity. So basically, the article that I read asked a really important question. If it's the person's brain that's actually causing them to commit the crime, then is the person still responsible for the crime, or is the person's brain responsible for the crime? And if it's really their brain that's responsible, then how should they be punished? And I thought that was a really interesting question but it also made me feel kind of uncomfortable to separate your brain from a person, because what is a person without their brain? But that's what this field does. It assumes that the brain can be a separate entity, and that abnormalities in the brain can cause you to do certain actions that you wouldn't do if you were healthy. I thought that was kind of disturbing because it was strange to think of your brain as your own personal villain. In neuroplasticity, your brain is kind of your own hero that helps you regain control of your life after a terrible disease. And in this case, it's kind of assuming that your brain is a villain. And I thought that was an interesting perspective, but I probably wouldn't choose it as a specialty because it's just a slightly disturbing thought. My next research assessment focused on a topic similar to that, and it's over the debate of free will. Does free will exist, or are we all just slaves of our destiny? Some scientists believe that they can prove that free will really does not exist. According to their experiments, the brain makes a decision several seconds before we consciously make the same decision. So in essence, they believe that the brain makes a decision before us, so we are not truly making the decision. The brain is. Again, like the brain is almost a separate entity. But there's still some debate over whether that experiment is valid and is specific enough to make a general conclusion. A similar experiment explored whether, when people were told that free will does not exist, it was interesting to see that those people were more likely to cheat on a test than others. This observation shows that when people don't believe that free will exists, then they lose all motivation to uphold their morals. So in the unlikely event that free will is proven not to exist, that might have some dangerous effects on society. There might be just chaos everywhere. And that's just a truly scary thought. However, the government funds research mainly for more concrete research. While the debate over free will is really interesting, the government is more interested in research in diseases that will directly benefit the people. So most scientists work in fields related to diseases. So for my next research assessment, I chose autism as my topic for the research assessment. And autism is a disease that almost all of us have heard about. It's very common, and almost all of us have heard that it's incurable. However, recent studies have shown that a certain method of treatment called applied behavioral analysis could possibly be used to cure autism completely. It's shown promise, and several students and several children have benefited from it already. This basically works on the concept of identifying every single incorrect behavior that a child does that is not acceptable to society, and they seek to correct each behavior individually. So then the child learns what he should do instead of what he shouldn't do, and that helps to reverse and bring the brain back to normal function. Besides research assessments, I've also learned a lot in ISM through research interviews. I've been on 3 interviews so far, and they've all been with college professors or professors to be. most of my interviews, and during most of my interviews, I learned more about neuroscience as a career path rather than the research aspect of it. Because they were all college professors, and that's what I thought I was going to be, I was interested to know what the life of a college professor was truly like. I could say that I was slightly disappointed by the results because their life isn't as glamorous as I thought it would be. I mean, I thought the research part would be so much more exciting, but it turns out that professors don't actually do much of the research themselves, which was kind of disappointing. Most of their work is related to writing grants and applying for funding from the government, and it's their students who actually carry out most of their research. That was definitely a disappointing, I guess, bringing back to earth for me, like a jerk back to reality, I guess. And it made me reconsider if being a college professor was really what I wanted to do. It's definitely a very stressful job because you have two responsibilities, being a professor and a researcher. And it doesn't have the benefits that I thought it would. So I'm not quite sure if I'm going to continue to be a professor, and I'm on the lookout currently for other career options in the field of neuroscience. During ISM, I've learned more than just about neuroscience. I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned a lot of helpful skills as well. One of those skills is definitely time management. As cliche as it sounds, I've been one of those students who's a procrastinator, and I always leave stuff to the last minute in my entire history of school. But this year, it's been much more challenging. The challenge of AP courses and ISM altogether has led me to be more appreciative of the time I have and start planning in advance. So I've started on the road to have better time management, and that's definitely one of the most important skills I've learned in ISM.